Welcome to yet another episode, Pound for Pound Box Report, episode 437. I'm your host, Michael. Joining me, usual cast of characters. We're all back this week. Uh, Gail from nyfights.com, Daniel from Four Boxing News, and the Inscriber, excuse me. What's going on, lady and gent?
The band is back together just in
I'll be
time
right.
for a little knockout chaos.
Chaos being the
And
operative word
chaos,
because,
yeah, the chaos is also on our shores and social channels. And y'all know what I'm talking about if you've been out there.
right, because this past week or so, wow. For those who are new to Pound for Pound Box Report, Pound for Pound Boxing Report, live YouTube show, podcast, blog, site, etc., talking all things boxing. The motto is when boxing is good, we will talk about it. When it's bad, we will talk about it. Bottom line is, if it concerns the sweet science, it will get discussed. For those who want to find out any and all information regarding Pound for Pound Boxing Report, the site for the time being is the place to go to, p4pboxingreport.com. If you wish to email us with any comments or questions, you can do so, p4pboxing at p4pboxingreport.com. On the site, you'll find links where to catch us all over the social, links to the YouTube channel, links to the Facebook, Twitter, IG page, also links to where to find us all over the podcast realm, be it Anchor, be it Spotify, be it Apple Podcasts. For the time being, Google Podcasts, wherever you listen to your favorite podcast, you should be able to find Pound for Pound Box Report. And if you wish to donate, for those who have now filed their taxes and got some spare change and they want to contribute, got a Cash Me and PayPal donation link. Also, for fitness enthusiasts, please check out the link to BODI Body, formerly known as Beachbody On Demand. That fitness app programs for any and all suitable fitness interests and goals. If you're looking for what to strictly lift weights, check out programs like Lift 4, Lift More, Body Beast, the sample workout for Dig Deeper. If you're looking for CrossFit, heavy duty functional workouts, check out programs like Chop Wood, Carry Water, 645, 6 weeks of the work. If you're looking for a morning specific workout program for the early birds, check out programs like Morning Meltdown. Runs the gamut. If you're into Pilates, they got something for you. If you're into yoga, they got something for you. If you're looking for a boxing specific program, please check out 10 Rounds, 6 week program, 2 days a week of weightlifting, 3 days a week of boxing based cardio. Um, Last but certainly not least, take advantage of the 14-day trial, which runs throughout the year, or take advantage of the sale right now. I think for anyone who's interested and new subscribers, they got a 50% off deal going on right now on BODI. And before we get to break down these fights, I haven't mentioned it the last couple of shows, we are looking for another member to join Pound for Pound Boxing Report due to our fluctuating schedule. Sometimes we're here, sometimes we're not, yada, yada, yada. So Gail, and myself, and Daniel behind the scenes, we are looking for an additional member. If you're interested in being on the panel on a regular, semi-regular basis, just reach out to me on Pound for Pound Boxing Report page. Hit me with the DM at P4P Boxing at P4P BOXING RPT, or you can just simply email us P4P Boxing at P4PBoxingReport.com. Let's get to break down these fights. And always, we begin the show with ladies first. It may have not have been the most talked about fight heading into this past weekend, but it was certainly the fight that was on the minds of boxing heads in the aftermath, Gail. And I'm talking about Otabek Kholmatov, excuse me, and his fight with Raymond Ford for the vacant WBA featherweight strap, right? Lee Wood, the former champion, vacated the title. And Otabek and Ford. Ford had plenty of problems in this fight. Otabek showed himself to be a very, very good boxer. Used his advantage in length, used his jab, and Ford was having a tough time adjusting. Uh, but he kept saying throughout the fight that he was going to stop him. It did not look that way, Gail, until the last round. Not just the last round, but basically the last minute of the last round. Ford was finally able to catch up to Otabek, hurt him, finished him off in dramatic fashion with 25 seconds to go in the round. I named this particular episode "Pulling It Out of the Fire." That was certainly the case for Raymond Ford. Few episodes back, we talked about Nashinga in his dramatic win over Curiel to regain the IBF belt at 108 pounds. This ranks right up there, pulling victory out of the jaws of defeat, Gail.
Oh my God. We didn't know as viewers exactly how close the cards were. We knew they were close. Well, as it turned out, Ford absolutely needed that stoppage to win. It wasn't a point off. He was leading on one card, but Otabek was well ahead on the other two, enough to have gotten through the round. And think about the variables involved. Otabek had Kholmatov had run through the first half, pretty much in command, and Ford had to claw his way back once he figured out how he needed to approach Kholmatov. Kholmatov in that last round we had open scoring, for example, and he'd known what the cards were. He could have just cruised through that round. He could have danced at the margins, got on his bicycle. He would have won that fight. He would have won that belt. But instead, both corners were telling their guys, you got to win the 12th round. You got to win the 12th round. So he was there engaging. So you've got that. Well, nope, they decided to go for it. All right. So we've got a lively last round. And most of us initially thought, with about 30 seconds left in the fight, that Ford had scored a knockdown of Kholmatov. Not the case. Charlie Fitch ruled it a slip. Kholmatov has a very bad knee, and frequently he wears a brace on it. He was not permitted to do that in this last fight. So it appears that he had re-injured whatever soft tissue damage he's got. And that is possibly why he fell, more than just a slip. Nevertheless, Fitch rules it a slip, and which is fine, because if he had ruled that a knockdown and then gave him a count, let him get up, ask him a question or two, and then lets him go toward Ford, the round would have been over. And Kholmatov would have, once again, even with a knockdown, would have escaped with the belt. Instead, the action resumes immediately. Ford nails him with a couple of wicked hooks. He spins him around with his back toward the center of the ring, front towards the ropes being held up, and Fitch rightfully stops the fight with 7 seconds left. You can't ask for more than that as a fan. And you've got to be so pleased for Raymond Ford, who has not had anything handed to him on the way up. He has ground it out. He has stuck it out. His small team has stuck by him out of Camden, New Jersey. He was so emotional. The whole team was. And everybody who knows Ford and has worked with him was emotional. There were several videos catching a teary-eyed Eddie Hearn. When's the last time you saw that? Who kind of, chuckled it off. It's like, yeah, I think I got something in my eye. Long-time, well-respected photographer Ed Mulholland, who photographs for Matchroom and used to be the chief photographer for HBO Boxing, who's also the chief photographer for the New Jersey Nets team, so certainly knows Raymond Ford as a New Jersey resident. In all the years Ed has been photographing boxing, he has never in 2 decades plus gotten up into the ring and taken a photo with a victorious fighter until this weekend with Ray Ford. He told me it's the first time he'd ever done it. That's how much everyone likes and respects Raymond Ford, and was so happy to see him get that crazy improbable win. And that is a fight that changes that young man's life. Now, Kholmatov does not need to hang his head. He almost won it. He looked perfectly, in control for most of the fight. He lost a little steam down the stretch. He'll learn from this. It's only his first loss. He'll be back. And honestly, this is what boxing does best. We just don't get to see it often enough.
And I echo your sentiments about all parties involved. Um, Kholmatov for his effort, Ford for his story, his camp. And I have to give us shout out to Eddie Hearn. We all know the fight that's happening this weekend, the big event over in Saudi Arabia with Joshua and then Ngannou. We'll talk about that later on in the show. He could have easily been over there. In fact, after the fight, he said he had something kept telling him he needed to be there, and he was. Ford, for those who do not know, Ford is with Matchroom. Ford signed, Hearn saw something in Ford early before anybody knew anything about him. Reached out to him when Ford was an amateur, and stuck with him. Shows what happens a fighter, when a promoter sticks by their fighter and vice versa. Um, so kudos to him as well. Let's move future wise, particularly in terms of Ford, Daniel. In the emotions of the win, and given this card fighting, Ford fighting also IBF featherweight champion, Martinez fighting on the undercard, right? The natural inclination is that could set up a possible unification fight between the two. But during the post-fight interview, Ford said that he's moving up to 130 immediately. He said it was a tough time making the weight. Uh, Hearn seems to have a different idea. Who do you think will win out here? I Reasonable minds would think that Ford would at least pull in a title, at least one title defense, uh, be it a unification bout, fight against whoever to get a little coin in the bank, or a high-profile title defense before moving up. Do you think Ford will ultimately stick to his post-fight comments and move immediately up to 130 to fight maybe a Cordina, or do you think Hearn will kind of nudge him behind the scenes and tell him, let's just get one more fight in at 26 before you move up?
I would lean more towards the latter because it wasn't. He didn't look in this fight like you could tell that he was struggling to make weight because he held his power, he held his body shots, and the shots that he landed, particularly in the second half of the fight, you could tell that there was some pop in them. That may be one of the reasons why he wants to immediately go up to 130 because he probably feels that those punches that he landed on Kholmatov in 126 would have knocked him out if he was at 130. That being said, your promoter is normally going to try to nudge you in the direction that they have a plan for. Like you mentioned, IBF man, the IBF champion's also underneath the Matchroom umbrella. So it is good to keep things in house, but in many ways, I think shows Joe Cordina, if I remember correctly. He's also in the Matchroom umbrella. So as far as cutting the pie, it almost feels like Eddie Hearn is going to win one way or another. The situation has to be though is you won the belt, and it isn't a situation where it's an anyway or a bud where they wind up winning all four belts and then they don't wind up defending it, but they achieve something and becoming undisputed. The Ford, tip my hat to him, has won this title. It took that knockout to win it. And at that stage, you probably still want to give it a little bit of a go. Try to at least make a decent defense. It doesn't have to be something high caliber. It doesn't have to be. It has to be a defense. But I would normally sometimes like to take fighters at their word when it comes to trying to make weight. If it's a situation where your camp is not focused on technique, if it's more focused on weight cutting, and if it's not an issue due to laziness, but it's just simply that your body doesn't want to go down past a certain weight, then yeah, it might be time. But he did achieve becoming a champion. He has that mark on. He has that mark of a champion now, and it does give him the avenue to when they go to 130, say like I want to challenge immediately. I am a former champion. I won my belt, and I want to make sure that I can challenge the best of 130. But I got a feeling he's going to do at least one defense at featherweight.
I tend to agree. I mentioned the undercard, the fact that this was kind of a world title uh, doubleheader on the undercard. Luis Alberto Lopez Daniel defending his IBF belt against Ray Abe. Um, my apologies if I'm pronouncing the name wrong. When Lopez beat Michael Conlon, I thought he looked terrific, but in his next fight after that, I was like, his performance was kind of mid, and there was some in the boxing community who felt he was lucky to get the victory. Kind of returned to script in this fight against the Japanese challenger, as he was pretty much in control from the opening bell, from start, from opening bell to finish in round two, eighth round stoppage. Right,
Mm-hmm.
uh, future here for Lopez. He's talking unification, but there's also word that he also wants the winner of the fight between Oscar Valdez and the Australian guy Wilson, who gave Navarrete such a tough fight last year. The future Luis Alberto Lopez, Daniel.
It is going to be interesting to see what the future of Lopez is going to head because this this fight was weird. This fight was kind of weird because Lopez can throw combinations, but at the same time, a lot of the punches that you saw throw him in, they were more looping than anything else. He landed in when he needed to be, but at a certain point, it looked like it was more going to be the arm punches. I could see him at this stage, like he put on a bad performance. Now he did put on a good performance. If he wants to get a good money fight, and since his name still has a bit of value, I could see him waiting for the winner of that fight with Valdez and Wilson because it's still a high caliber name in Oscar Valdez. You know you're gonna at least gonna get a fight where they're gonna challenge each other. But at the same time, it's gonna make pretty decent money.
And we will see where he goes in Puerto Rico. Gail, um, Jonathan Gonzalez, right? Often talked about in a unification bout with Kenshiro Taraji. Fought in his home country, fought Rene Santiago, who is the WBO interim champ. Gonzalez is the WBO full time champion. Gonzalez got the win, but for the first half of the bout, I would say Santiago was right there with him, and I think buzzed him on a couple occasions. Particularly, I believe it was in round seven. But to Gonzalez's credit, he kind of switched strategies here, went to the body of Santiago, and was the fresher man in the championship rounds. And to close the stretch, he ended up getting a decision. The question is, where does he go from here? Do you think he will try to pursue once again a fight with Taraji, or do you think he will move up to 112? Because in the post-fight interview, he said that he was having issues making the junior flyweight limit of 108 pounds. said he's going to talk to his team, and they will decide on what's next for him.
Yeah, boy, it's a little like the issues that Ray Ford has. He is really struggling to make weight at 126, just like Gonzalez is struggling to make weight at 108. And yeah, there is a really good money fight for him at 108 if he goes to Japan to fight Kenshiro Taraji. But he needs to be realistic, just like I think Ray Ford needs to be realistic. I mean, if they cannot make weight, they need to move up. They need to not punish themselves. They need to not risk a tough fight in less than optimal condition. It just, as much as you want it, you just can't do it. All the big fights for Gonzalez, to a point, are going to be in Japan until he gets up to being, in a high enough weight division to start staring down the likes of Bam Rodriguez, right? So, he's going to have some tough decisions to make with his team. I mean, if he thinks he can make 108, I see no reason for him not to go after Taraji. He'll get a nice paycheck for it. Where else is a guy who weighs 108 pounds, going to make that kind of money? That is it. And that's a barn burner fight there. So if he can make it, he should try, but he shouldn't risk not being in peak condition to go up against a buzzsaw like that. He just shouldn't.
I understand. He says he wants to fight Taraji, but he wants to be paid top dollar. I can understand that. But if he moves up to 112 pounds because he's the WBO champion at 108 per their section body rules, he would automatically be the number one contender. Should he move up, he would be the WBO number one contender at 112. Jesse Bam Rodriguez, of course, is the current champion. He's going to move up to fight Gallo Estrada this summer, it looks like. So should Gonzalez move up, he would be first in line to fight for the vacant belt. But that Taraji fight has been talked about for close to a year now. It was supposed to happen April last year. Gonzalez had to bow out due to illness. I think he should go that direction. Sticking around for one more fight and try to seek that fight with Taraji in Japan. Gonzalez turned out to be the main event here because what was supposed to be the main event, Amanda Serrano defending her unified women's featherweight titles against Meinke, mandatory challenger. Minutes, Daniel and Gail. The fight was canceled. Turns out that Serrano is dealing with an injury to her eye, dermatitis. And what that is, for those who don't know, that's when the skin above and below the eye come in contact with like an allergen or something that irritates the eye or an allergen. And in hindsight, now I'll get the conversation started with you, Daniel. You can follow up, Gail. The fact that Serrano came to the weigh-in wearing glasses, that should have been a telltale sign that something was up. The fallout, $1.5 million refund. Fans were ticked off fight night when it was announced. Serrano was emotional, trying to explain. She also gave an explanation on Twitter as well. What do you make of this, Daniel? This eye injury, coupled with the injuries that she's had over the past year plus since the fight with Katie Taylor. I don't want to be alarmist here, but physically with Serrano, the real deal, could it be that she's kind of breaking down?
This was extremely weird because there was rumblings about something the day before, because like you mentioned that she came into the weigh-in wearing sunglasses. That's usually the telltale sign that maybe you overdid it a little bit. in trying to make weight. And unfortunately, that's one of the key factors we see in what's been happening with Amanda Serrano, which is she's moved up and down so much in different weight classes that sometimes that type of movement in your body may catch up with you. Now, few things that were completely done wrong in one, at least in my eyes. First, if there was an inkling that the zone or Jake Paul or anybody else knew that this was part of it, they should have at least known a little bit, eliminate some parts of the broadcast. Because I remember correctly, I think during the Gonzalez Santiago fight, I forgot who they interviewed, but they did an interview with the thinking that, yeah, we're going to see Amanda tonight. If they were privy to this news, that's something that you cannot slide in that area. Now, from my understanding, Amanda was saying that it happened because I guess a chemical from hair braiding got in her eye, and it was just one of those things that happened beyond the control. But like I mentioned, there was rumblings of something that happened the day before, and I don't know if it's a situation where maybe Jake Paul felt that if they announced that Amanda wasn't going to be able to make the fight before the weigh-in, I don't know if it's a situation where he felt that him getting top billing at that point wasn't going to be the ticket pusher that, or the audience pusher that he felt he should be, and maybe they held off into that area, but nobody was happy in that area. Now, Amanda did say that if she fought that night, and either way, if she won or lost, she would have retired. If she's already thinking about retirement, that probably already tells you that, yeah, that thought's been in there for a while. I can understand why she might be getting tired of chasing Katie Taylor, trying to avenge her win. And if you're chasing that, meanwhile, you're getting a little slower. Your body's not reacting the same way to making weight. That could play a factor into it. And then just have this couple of it. That's usually sometimes the universe trying to tell you that maybe you should slow down. Maybe it's time to stop. But it was a pretty bad look in many ways. If it was known well beforehand. Like I said, there were rumors of something at the day weigh-in. There was rumors of something. But if they Paul knew, if the zone knew the day before, or they found out early on during the fight, then the way it was handled to me was really, really bad.
What do you make of all of this, Gail?
Shit happens. Shit happens. I mean, I don't think we need to get too wound up about it. In hindsight, should someone have owned up to this a little more quickly? Maybe. Apparently, Serrano had her hair done in a salon there in Puerto Rico on Wednesday. She went for a run Thursday. And this is where the chemical bleeding, apparently, she's perspiring. The stuff starts running down her face. It gets into her eye. I will just tell you, as somebody who's had more than a few chemicals put in my hair in the day, and it happens. It does happen. I'm not sure what it was that was used on her that caused eye damage, but apparently it burned her cornea. And has left it somewhat exposed. I guess that eventually it does heal. And the thinking after this happened was we can get her to a point where she can see enough. We've known plenty of boxers who get in the ring or are in the ring after a damaged eye and they are really a one-eyed fighter and they carry on. So there is that. Apparently they were trying to treat it, trying to get her through the fight. That's why she had the glasses on at the weigh-in. That's why there wasn't a face-off, because they still thought they could pull this one out and make this fight happen. But they got it down to the wire, and apparently, to their credit, the physician working on behalf of the Puerto Rican Athletic Commission said, nope, no fight. Not going to let you go out there. Now, Salvador Rodriguez of ESPN Deportes reported he had heard this a good hour plus before the bout. At that point, boxing Twitter says, what? Wait a minute. And people were a little slow on the uptake, probably not Daniel, because it was in Spanish. But let me tell you, Chava is very, very reputable. And if he reports something, you pretty much take it to the bank. I had a really hard time believing that was the case. A second reporter verified it. Okay. Now we've got what is the co-main, the Jake Paul fight. All right. So maybe we've got a little time before everything needs to be revealed. And that's fine, except that Jake Paul beat the over-under by quite a bit under, getting a first-round knockout. So, whoops, uh-oh. Well, all right. I kept thinking, and when are we going to hear this? Finally, ring announcer Lupe Contreras owns up. Card's over. Amanda clearly very upset, tearful, apologizing to the crowd, apologizing to her opponent. She wanted to go out with a win in front of her home nation, and she intends to resign from boxing and pursue the PFL. That's where she wanted to go. She wanted to have her homecoming and final fight in Puerto Rico. And this was not really a secret. Not really a secret. But, things didn't quite work out the way she planned. So Nina Meinke was left in the dark all this time because apparently they really, truly believed they were going to get her in that ring. And it just didn't happen. They just couldn't force it. She was gloved up. She'd already gotten gloved up. She was ready to go. She seems to really have no ill will toward Amanda over this. And why should she? Because Jake Paul has enough money where he can afford to do the right thing. He offered full refunds to any ticket goer who wanted them, and he paid Nina Meinke her full purse. That's what every boxing promoter should do when something like this happens, but a lot of them just simply can't afford to. Jake, he can afford to do that. So Jake ends up being the main event. He should have really messed around in the ring a little longer, giving people a little more of a look at him. Nevertheless, I get that they're very disappointed, and I certainly understand any fan wanting a refund. But she intends to restage the fight. She'll be back the minute she's cleared. I'm sure they'll reschedule. She'll get that fight, and she will call it a boxing career at that point. I do firmly believe that will be her very last fight. There are rumors about her and Katie Taylor having a final fight in Las Vegas. And never say never. If the money is big enough, things happen. And when you've got Jake Paul as one of the people involved, things can happen. But
excuse me for interrupting, Gail. I didn't put this in the chat. And with news, I didn't put this in the doc. Excuse me. With news that Taylor has decided to bow out of a third fight with Chantel Cameron. You do have a point. We could see finally the rematch between Serrano and Taylor later on this year.
Yeah, there's been chatter that they'll take it to Las Vegas this time. So, we'll see. I think, in Amanda's case, she truly has nothing left to prove in her boxing career. And if she thinks that she'd like to really make a go of mixed martial arts with the PFL, she'd be a very big star there. She'd earn good money. She may feel ambitious about that accomplishment and decide to go that direction. She's a guaranteed Hall of Famer. That's just not even an issue. I think it will only come down to the money. How much money will it take for her to change her mind? And you know what? She may decide money isn't what's going to cause me to change my mind. I've got enough. I don't think she lives a very extravagant lifestyle. I think she lives a fairly simple life, and she may decide, the clock's ticking. If I want to do this mixed martial arts thing, I'm going to move on. Stay tuned.
Keep you updated on the condition of Amanda Serrano, and when she will return to the ring. Big Baby Anderson, right? His talent is obvious. The best heavyweight American prospect that we've seen in a few years, right? But there's issues with him outside of the ring. Got in trouble with the law October last year. Arrested recently over the weekend. Third-degree felony. Blasted ESPN and Top Rank on social media when all they was doing is reporting the news of his arrest and whatnot. Are we seeing a potential heavyweight champion here, Gail, spiraling out of control and let what is a promising career slip through his fingers?
You have to wonder how much of a promising career there was even before this incident. Had a few bubbles on the bottom of the pan with Anderson. And he has been very open about saying, yeah, I don't really intend to fight more than a couple more years. I don't love it. I do it for the money. Yeah, I'm going to retire when I'm 27. If I am Todd DeBuff, Carl Moretti, and Bob Arum, I'm not real happy with one of your finer heavyweight prospects saying that he isn't really into it, okay, and that he doesn't intend to stick around. Daniel was quite right when he said, when a fighter starts talking about retiring, they've got one foot out the door. I mean, that's a shocking thing to hear a 25-year-old with this much promise say. Then we get to the incident, which isn't anywhere near the category of some of the little dust-ups we've seen of guys getting caught with a firearm in a car or get pulled over for, reckless driving. Oh, no. He's apparently in a completely tricked out Dodge Challenger muscle car with a rear-mounted camera on apparently on a post on the car, more or less taunting the police to chase him and shooting video of it. What the hell is he thinking? This really escalates. This is as bad an arrest, short of physical violence from one person to another, about as bad as you can get. He's being held, and then he mouths off about ESPN making him look bad. You know what? No, Jared, you made yourself look bad, not them. You need to look in the mirror, and he either needs to stop wasting everyone's time and money and get out, or he needs somebody to straighten his ass up. This is
Right.
incredibly disappointing. This is starting to veer dangerously toward promising talent going to waste. Let us list the names. We all know them. One of them's acting up today on social media, Adrian Broner, Julio Cesar Chavez. Shall we go on? It's incredibly disappointing for fans who really thought we had the next great American heavyweight talent. You know, we're going to get to enjoy some high level heavyweight boxing on Friday. You know, Jared Anderson is nowhere near being ready to participate in something like that, talent aside, because he just keeps tripping himself up. He literally puts his foot in his mouth over and over. He really hasn't acted up or mouthed off toward anyone else until this incident, you know, follows it up and makes it worse for himself. What if I'm top rank? No matter how good he is, I don't know if they give him one last try. If they decide 3 strikes, you're out, it's going to be a tough call for them. I'm not sure, though, that you put all your promotional time and effort and all the people it takes to do that behind somebody when they're acting like this. I really don't know what they're going to do. And it depends on whether he gets his head together fast enough, atones for what he's done, eats dirt over it. He better, or his career is over. You know?
Talented fighters. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you was finished, Gail. My
Oh,
bad.
I thought it was too. I mean, who's left for him? Who else would touch him? Don King or bare knuckle. That's about it.
Talented fighters do get a pass, Daniel. They get more chances often than they deserve because they see potential and they see them, and these promoters see the money that they can make off of them. Do you think that is the case for Big Baby, or are you more in lines of Gail is like he needs to straighten up and fly right, or they will eventually drop him like a bad habit?
There's 2 factors that come into play here. Number one, yeah, you have talent, which Jared Anderson does have. And number 2, with Deontay Wilder not being, unfortunately, what he was a few years ago as far as the knockout artist, basically, he's not what he was pre-Fury. With that not being on the table, Jared Anderson is it when it comes to American heavyweights. As far as that, you could say that they're somewhat ready for prime time. The thing is, he's not. When you pull a stunt like this and then get mad that a news network, keep in mind, ESPN still has to cover the news. It isn't solely just Top Rank dictates what they can say. This is a legitimate news story that they had to report on. When you do that and you're mad that a news network actually reported it, it kind of tells you the mentality, unfortunately, that Big Baby Anderson currently has at the moment. Now, granted, Gail's right. He did say that he did not really envision himself staying in boxing for a very long time. So that mentally he may already capped himself as far as potential, saying like, okay, I set myself to stop boxing at this age, so I'm not going to push anything that can take me beyond that. That could be it. But at the same time, what else are you going to do at this stage? Because you mentioned like you can do bare knuckle, but bare knuckle is already pretty screwy as it is. And if Bob drops you, I'm not gonna say that your only option is Don King, but your only options are probably gonna be either Don King, Al Heyman, or Jake Paul. And at this stage, Don King, we're just waiting for the obituary to come in, and anything that benefits Jake Paul is bad overall, as far as
Bad
I'm concerned.
move. Bad move. It was Jake. No, bad. No, no,
No,
no,
no, but that's what I mean.
no.
Anything that benefits Jake Paul in many ways is not a good move.
You know what? I don't think Jake Paul put up with this shit. Jake Paul isn't putting up with Montana Love shit. I mean, and that's mild compared to what Jared Anderson has done. You know, Jake Paul, say what you will about him, love him, hate him. He is very disciplined in what he does. He was disciplined um, building up his empire. He has turned out to be very disciplined about boxing. I don't think he put up with it. So forget about a big payday from Jake Paul. And Al Heyman doesn't really need any more problems, does he? I mean, he's watching the Charlo brothers implode before his eyes.
Yeah,
I, I think it's power slap. I mean, or he may truly just have enormous talent and simply not be interested. And if you're not all in boxing, you know, we all know what the saying is, you don't play boxing. If he is not fully dedicated, he needs to get out for his safety and the safety of his opponents.
yep. This it's not a situation where it's not a Mikey Garcia situation, because if people remember, if when Mikey Garcia get into the ring, everybody knew for a while that he didn't want to be a boxer. He wanted to be a cop. But even still, he dedicated himself fully into boxing until he felt comfortable enough where he could walk away. Jared Anderson is nowhere near in that position at the moment. You don't have the cachet to just say you can live off your laurels in many ways. And you're in a public where they may want you to stay in because, like I mentioned, Deontay's not Deontay anymore. Even though he may still have arguably one of the best sleepers in the sport, he's not Deontay Wilder anymore. So you're it, because unfortunately the trend still continues that the best talent you consider heavyweight, they're not in the boxing gyms. They're the NFL Combine right now. So that's a very tough fair when it comes to Jared Anderson. But considering how social media has been today, he may not be alone in just being in the crazy bunch.
Going to read a comment from Alex Alberto. He says, "Hey everyone, late, but he thinks that Jared will get back on track and is a future champion. He's only 24." True. That's why I say that talented fighters get a pass, particularly when they're young. And from a physical standpoint, he has a lot of the tools that could carry him forward. It could carry him to a title. Uniquely athletic and fast and quick for a big man. And we have to remember, in spite of all the issues with him, he has the praises. What fighter has sung his praises quite often? One Tyson Fury, who Big Baby has sparred with on numerous times, particularly when when Fury prepared for Wilder. The Gypsy King has called him, um, has said he's going to do special things in this sport, and so I agree with you that he's only 24 and he has the time to get things together, but uh, his actions right now are a problem. It'd be one thing if he was a fight, if he was a world champion doing this kind of thing, but the leash is shorter, for lack of a better word. I don't even like using that when it comes to humans. Um, but it is what it is. It's shorter for guys who are not there yet, and he's not there yet. Whatever is going on with him, let's hope that he get his issues resolved soon. Because if he does, he's just missing out on so much uh, um, in terms of what he can do and also provide for his family. Speaking of fighters who are doing things that are making folks scratch their heads, a lot of chatter in these boxing streets, Gail and Daniel, when it comes to Ryan Garcia and his actions uh, during the press tour, and even after the press tour for his upcoming fight with Devin Haney. There are folks in and around him expressing concerns in terms of his mental state. Ryan insists that that everything was okay. His dad, who's another story, giving his comments during the second, I believe, press conference between him and Haney, says that Ryan is okay, and Team Garcia basically saying that this is just basically all for show, and that he's going to buckle down. Um, and do the right thing in terms of training for Haney. But yet and still, folks have had their say. What do you think about all the scuttlebutt in terms of the quote unquote king, if you will, Ryan Garcia?
Uh,
You're on mute, Gail.
I thought you were directing that to Daniel.
No, that was to you, Gail.
Ryan has not been in all that good a place for some time, long before this. Yeah, he got himself together enough to have a fight with Oscar Duarte, but he seems to have a lot of personal issues, a lot of doubts. And I have some sympathy for this. He has lived his life under a microscope. He has grown up and made his fame on social media. And I think it is a matter of living by the sword, dying by the sword. And he is of the generation, for whom they don't remember a time before social media. And I imagine in Ryan's shoes feels like being out there on display isn't really a choice in the way that somebody who's not a digital native, myself, I think to myself, do I like being out there? Is it useful to me? Do I have the choice of what I reveal or don't reveal? Of course I do. Do I have the kind of fame Ryan does? Of course not. But I still can make an independent decision about how much I want to expose. I'm not sure that enters the mind of somebody who's grown up in the environment like Ryan, egged on, no doubt, by all the people around him who, whether they really intend it to manifest this way or not, are depending on him to make it big, because then they get to ride along and make it big too. They get their seat on the gravy train. So they get blinded a little bit to what the best interests of somebody in Ryan's position are, or they're in denial about how serious it is or isn't. But I've got to think that inevitably is unhealthy. It's toxic. Not everyone can handle it. I think very, very few figure out how to handle it. I think Jake Paul figured out how to handle it, strangely enough. There are others who do. There are a lot who don't. And this has messed them up. I'll be very interested to see, how does somebody carry on with their life, and once they reach 40, 45, 50, 60. I gotta say, his promoter, Oscar De La Hoya, grew up long before social media, but he has always, from a very young age, been so famous and so in the spotlight. He has felt a little of what Ryan is going through as well, and he has had his own demons. He seems to have beaten them back once again, but it's been a lifelong struggle for him, and he has freely admitted to that. Ryan's on the front end of this. I'm not sure what's going to happen to him. All of us endlessly speculating, watching breathlessly for the next post, the next family member that then has something distressing to say. All the people around him pretending to know what's going on. Personally, I'm removing myself from it. You tell me whether there's a fight or not. You tell me to apply for a credential or not. And we go from there. I want him to work his stuff out, whatever it is. If he needs to pull out this fight, he does need to do it for the good of everyone else involved who's making that investment of time and money. Do not make a mistake of waiting too long. Better one day too soon than one day too late. And if he's not ready, he's not ready. There is life way, way beyond one fight.
The question I have ultimately, Daniel, given what Gail has talked about, do the folks around him, be it Golden Boy, et cetera, do and the past issues, public and private, that 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 they and Garcia have had in the past, does Golden Boy have his best interest at hand?
Depends on what they're doing behind the scenes. It really depends on what they're doing behind the scenes. If behind the scenes, Bernard Hopkins, which I'm pretty sure is probably the point man in this situation, if he's trying to talk to Ryan and his team, telling him, get off Twitter, stop talking to Andrew Tate, and
That part.
yeah, and actually just focus on having a fight, that's one area. If they're just letting this fly for the sake of promotion, I know there's the old adage that all publicity is good publicity. That works. That worked in the days of print. In the days of print, in the early days of television and radio, where you had gatekeepers in many ways as to what information came out. We're living in the age where everybody kind of has like a mini TV studio in their hands, and they can produce whatever they want, and they can put it live for anyone to see. So there's a lot less control. So not all publicity is good publicity. We just talked about it with Jared Anderson. It's a situation that is very, very muddy, because we know that Ryan has had issues with mental health. He has openly admitted that he has had issues with mental health. And it could be the situation where the part of success may be getting to him. We do know like his family situation, both with parents and with his own child, are not as solid as they probably should be. And it also could be that Golden Boy knows this and may have a contingency plan, because one of the co-main fights if I remember, is Arnold Barbosa. And his opponent is technically right now listed as TBD. Maybe maybe Eric Gomez, maybe Bernard Hopkins, even Oscar, maybe are being smart and looking at the situation and saying, if we have to pull out Ryan, we don't have to nuke the card. We don't have to nuke the promotion. We'll move Barbosa up to fight Haney. And while Haney would still be the favorite, you would still have a very entertaining fight between an opponent, considering how Barbosa's style. We don't know yet. Like, this situation has spiraled to the point where people are actually discussing Haney fighting Adrian Broner. That's how bad this has already spiraled out of certain levels of control from a PR standpoint. personally, if I'm Eric Gomez, if I'm Bernard Hopkins, if I'm Oscar De La Hoya, particularly if you're Oscar De La Hoya, who Gail mentioned has had his own great fair share of controversies in the entertainment field, you do what's best for Ryan and you take him out of the fight. You take him out of the fight. You get him that help that he needs, because the way he's acting, I think it's a medical term or it's pretty much a colloquial term, is being terminally online. If you're online to this point, it's a problem. And yeah, you need to walk away from the things that are causing you to be online and have him focus on himself. It's not a situation where he's automatically going to lose any of the followers on IG or Facebook or Twitter. He's not going to lose them. I think a good amount of them will probably understand that, yeah, you have to walk away in order for yourself to be better. Because if you put him out there and his mental condition deteriorates, nobody will look good from it. Haney won't look good from it. Obviously, Oscar won't look good from it. Matchroom won't look from it. The zone will look good for it. It's a bad situation overall. If they're smart, they would pull him, pivot to Barbosa versus Haney, still have it at Barclays, because that's still an entertaining card, and that's still a good main event where you don't have to nuke the rest of the card. It's the best thing to do. You just hope that there's enough adults in the room to have that decision made.
From what I'm hearing, Barboza is only there to be the last minute step in. If this gets canceled, if Ryan bows out, the card's off long before. They're not going to spend that kind of money on a Barboza fight. I don't think. I'd love to be wrong. I wouldn't mind seeing Haney and Barboza. I think Barboza will give him a good run, even if he doesn't win. We'll see.
Any rumors that Barbosa is going to be on that card?
It's not a
Fighting?
it's not a rumor. He is scheduled in the co-main already. That's locked and sealed. He appeared and did interviews at both news conferences in New York and LA. He does not have a named opponent yet, however. But yeah, a little bit of a detail. But yeah, he is the co-main right now.
Yep.
So let's see what goes on with here, and let's hope that Ryan is 100% focused and he brings his best effort in the upcoming fight against Haney again April 20th at Barclays in Brooklyn. Let's move on and start previewing some fights here. We all know the big card in Saudi Arabia. Don't like the time. I mean, on a Friday, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard, 7 a.m. out in the West Coast. This is what happened. Gail, you talked about kind of, for lack of better words, I ain't gonna say that. I'm gonna use another word, but uh, uh, when the Saudi officials, they want whatever they get nowadays in boxing. Whatever they want, they get, and so they wanted this time, and they're getting this time to the dismay of a lot of fans. I mean, it's shoots 10 a.m. our time, 3:15 time over in the UK, in England. Most people are at work around that time. It's not convenient for anyone except the folks over in Saudi Arabia, but that's another. But I'm getting on my soapbox and ranting about that. Let's get to the fights itself. Madrimov versus Kurbanov. With the news of Charlo champion in recess, uh, um, they're not going to fight for a vacant belt, Madrimov and Kurbanov. Your thoughts, please. That's to you, Gail.
Madrimov has been kicking around, waiting for this opportunity for a long time. He's part of the Uzbeki crew out there with Joel Diaz in the desert in India, and that many of whom were originally brought over by Main Events, and Main Events still co-promotes some of those guys. It has been a long, slow grind, though, for guys like Gyasov, Madrimov, Murtazaliev, Beck the Bully is out there. I mean, there's just this whole crew, and they were all very, very accomplished amateurs. They all adapted very nicely to the Diaz gym style. And we all expected they were going to get these title shots long before now. But Madrimov, the dream, is finally getting his shot. And I think he will not squander it. I think he will do what he needs to do, win that title. He's been working at this a long time. He's unlike some of these knuckleheads we've been talking about. You know, these guys live a very Spartan life. He has a good work ethic, and I think it will pay off for him. It might not be the most exciting fight in the world. He is not particularly heavy-handed, but he's very skilled.
Also on that card, Daniel, uh, Ray Vargas returned the featherweight to defend the WBC belt against Nick Ball. Um, Funny moment during the press event where there was a stare down between the two. Vargas is so tall for a featherweight, like 5'11". Ball is tiny human at 5'2". The contrast between the two, Ball looking all the way up and Vargas looking all the way down like he's a little child. Very funny moment. But the fight itself, Ball is promising to bring the fight to him. He has no choice given his lack of height and size. Um, Vargas, 33 years old. Last time we remember him, he was getting outboxed thoroughly by Oshaki Foster. What do you see from him at this point of his career, moving back down and weight to defend his belt?
First, I'll share a little like a pre-show comment that I made. Yeah, that stare down looked like if Conor McGregor was doing a stare down on Hasbulla. That's that's how comical the height difference is. But the main thing when it comes to Ray Vargas at this stage of his career, going back down to featherweight, we have to remember he was a fighter that, because even though he has the height and he has the reach, never really used those advantages the way you probably would want to. And he didn't really have a lot of power at 126 where he could take out guys with ease. And Nick Ball is going to be a very interesting fighter because even despite the height difference, Oshaki Foster gave you a pretty decent blueprint. Now, granted, yeah, Nick Ball's not in the same skill ballpark as Oshaki Foster, but he could probably do some of the tactics that Foster used against Vargas to frustrate him, maybe cause him to get a mistake. Because remember, it is boxing. It only takes one punch to completely change your trajectory of your career. But barring that, I can definitely see Ray Vargas coming in, at least winning this fight. But we have to see how he looks. He has to not only show that he can fight in the area, he also has to show that maybe the weight cut isn't going to affect him as much. Because if it shows a little bit that the weight cut is affecting him much, he might not have a choice than to stick it around to 130, even though he may not have the power to last in that weight class either.
Let's move on to could arguably be the most low key best fight of the night. Zhilei Zhang and Joseph Parker. We remember Joseph Parker would turn out to be a dominant win over Deontay Wilder last December. Zhilei Zhang coming off of the two wins over Joe Joyce. The second one, emphatic stoppage, right? Um, both are on the cusp of a possible potential title shot. Both I would consider Gail top 10 heavyweights for sure. Styles makes fights. Both of these guys are going to be right there to hit and be hit. Uh, if Parker brings his A game and if Zhang brings his A game, I don't know who wins, but the one thing I'm sure of, it would make for a very entertaining scrap.
Oh, I think we're going to have a very, very fun fight to watch. Hey, I'm perfectly willing to take off a Friday for a fight card out of Saudi once in a while. I'm hustling to get all my work done so that I can check this out. Now, if I could just talk somebody into moving a meeting, I'd be all set. Now, admittedly, the early undercard is what starts at 10 a.m. Eastern, 7 a.m. Pacific. The main card starts at it starts at 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific. So it's not quite as bad as everybody makes it out unless you're watching those early 4-rounders. To the point, I think other than the intrigue over the main event, Zhang and Parker could deliver the fight of the card. Parker certainly had the best win of his career over Wilder, by far. We do need to admit that was not over a prime Deontay Wilder. So it's hard to gauge exactly where Parker is. He will give a great effort, no question about it. And he has bounced back nicely since getting completely squashed like a bug by Joe Joyce. He has had 5 wins since that fight with Joyce. Bless him for being that active. And in between, he is a much in demand sparring partner. He's completely become Tyson Fury's wingman, which is just crazy. They seem to get along great. I think half the time they have Parker there to watch him, and half the other time he's partying with him. Zhang, though, I have never seen somebody in boxing be this much of a late bloomer. I just really can't think of any other way to describe it. You know, he's closing in on 40, and he's only getting better and better and better. He seems to, not have the typical sort of wear on the tires you would expect from somebody at this age. He's taken little to no damage all his career. He's just so slow rolled it, and he seems to be in great condition. Age just is not a factor for him. I think he's starting to peak now. He's not on the downward side. With Parker, yes, he had a great performance. Harder to say, though, if it's a peak or it simply was smart matchmaking for him along the way, other than the Joyce fight. Zhang is bigger. Zhang is faster, despite being that big. But both of them will be there to hit and get hit. I do give the edge to Zhang. I just can't see Parker unless he gets very lucky, and sometimes preparation meets opportunity. He lands just the right shot. But if somebody's asking me to bet my hard-earned money, it goes to Big Bang. His momentum is just undeniable. He is coming very close to becoming the star of the division, and absent some kind of great performance in the main event, he could be after this weekend. I'm looking forward to this fight.
I want your opinion on this fight as well, Daniel. Thoughts on Zhang and Joseph Parker?
Oh, the fortunes of 2 men intersecting in right here now. We have to admit, Zhang has been in many ways a late bloomer, and actually one of the examples of when the IBF rankings actually work well, even though he technically got screwed in many ways in the fight with Herkovich. But it's very fun to see somebody that you can compare with Tyson Fury in many ways, as far as somebody that doesn't look the part of being that athletic for his size, but actually is. And let's face it, Joseph Parker is actually playing with house money right now. People, people, myself included, I think a good amount of boxing world, boxing fans, us degenerates, we all thought that Joseph Parker was just teed up for Deontay Wilder knockout. And Joseph Parker came in and proved everybody wrong. So any way that happens is he actually wins in the end. Like if he beats Zhang, he keeps riding that momentum from the fight, and now you have to legitimately consider him for Usyk. And if he loses, well, okay, you got one last shot, and you didn't lose to a bum. You lost to somebody that is a very credible heavyweight at this stage. So either way, he's going to win. He can win at this stage morally. I do expect Zhang to win out because he has something to prove. He does have something to prove, and you know that he has his eyes. Probably for if it's for the belts, it'll be Usyk. If it's for the money, it's Fury.
Main event, fight of the weekend. Of course, Anthony Joshua fighting in Ngannou. We all saw what when Ngannou and his highly competitive would turn out to be matchup with Fury last October. Joshua seems to be a resurgence in his career. Activity is the key for Miguel when it comes to AJ. Most prominent heavyweights fight once, maybe twice a year. He fought 3 times last year. Turns out it's going to be his fourth fight, really, within a calendar year. Looked really, really good against Otto Wallin. Uh, on paper, everything says AJ, the experience, the boxing ability. I think, unlike Fury, he has real legitimate one punch power. So he can put a dent in Ngannou, put some hurt on him, but that size of Ngannou, right? And the toughness in Ngannou. And he has thunder in his fist as well. If he can put down Fury with the shot, and certainly put down Anthony Joshua. So it adds that bit of intrigue. Your thoughts on this? Is Ngannou, is he better than a lot of folks, than many people think that he is? Is he better? Is he being underestimated here in terms of his skill set? We all know the physicality and the will; those are intangibles, right? But from a purely boxing perspective, when you bring that in with the intangibles, will he provide just as tough as of a test for Joshua that he provided for Fury last year?
Everybody has underestimated Francis Ngannou his entire life. If you know his life story, every single step of it has been so improbable, and yet he has prevailed all along the way. He, if somebody could make chicken salad out of chicken, you know what, it is Francis Ngannou. He refuses he refuses to lose. He refuses to play the victim. And he's had the right many times in his life. He simply refuses to take no for an answer. Um, He has an incredibly positive mindset and he believes in himself. That is true power beyond anything that comes out of your fists. He surprised everybody with his performance against Tyson Fury. Now, Joshua has the advantage, unlike Fury, of having seen Ngannou in the ring and how he performs. So he will certainly be better prepared. He damn well should be anyway. And I do think he's taking Ngannou far more seriously than Fury did. Ngannou now has the advantage of having stood toe-to-toe with one of the heavyweight champions of the world in his first professional boxing fight, dropped him, and nearly won that fight. And a lot of people think he did win that fight, and I'm one of them. Narrowly, but he certainly gave an accounting of himself that nobody expected to see. Intellectually, I think to myself, Joshua finally seems to be in a good place. He's been so smart to stay active. He's looked better and better and better. This is the right time to take a money fight like this where there's some danger involved. But damn it, a lot of people have gone wrong counting out Francis Ngannou. And I find it very hard to bet against him because he's proven so many people wrong all these years. He has now got that benefit of that experience in the ring with Fury, just like Joshua has the benefit of having watched him in the ring against Fury. He's supremely confident. Listening to him do interviews before this fight, he has made a believer out of me. I'm so impressed with him. It would truly upend the heavyweight division should he win. Can you imagine? He's got a great shot at it. And if you're the kind of person that would rather put your money down and risk the greater payout, risk to a point, I say you have to give Ngannou a few dollars on that bet. That doesn't necessarily mean he's going to win. And I do think if he wins, he does at least need to knock Joshua down. I don't think he will win on the cards. So let's see if he gets an early knockdown in the first half of the fight. Then things will get very, very interesting. So I'm dancing around a prediction. I do think I would take a flyer on Francis Ngannou if I was being asked to bet money. There it is.
Before I go to Daniel, read a couple of comments here. Shout out to Albert. Shout out to Marquise who's listening to us live right now. Albert says in terms of the Zhang fight with Parker, he says if Zhang wins, he wants to see him versus Wilder. I think Wilder can catch him slipping. Or given how Wilder looked and how all out of sorts and unstable, looks like he can't take a punch anymore, Zhang could steamroll him if he's not careful. If he's not careful, because I don't like how Wilder is looking physically. He just doesn't look strong, and he looks like the love of the sport doesn't look like it's there for him anymore. I'll just leave it at that. And Marquis says Zhang wins by points. In terms of, he also says that here that Wilder fight is set up for a letdown. He also says in terms of Joshua and Ngannou, he says AJ stays on the outside for all 10 rounds, i.e. the second Ruiz fight. He thinks that's the plan until he catches Francis flat-footed. See if there's any more comment. Albert says that if Joshua loses, he needs to retire. So I'm picking AJ. I'll go to you, Daniel. Your thoughts on the fight between Joshua and Ngannou?
First, I blame you, Tyson Fury, for this. I blame you. Because if you did not take this seriously, we wouldn't have this fight. If he just would have taken training seriously, maybe you would have been across the ring from AJ. Because we know that you're gonna find. I'll say it right now, folks. Tyson Fury's gonna find a way to get out of the Usyk fight. He is going to. But
You're not gonna let
that
it
is,
go, huh, Daniel? You ain't letting it go, huh?
I'm gonna. The bell has to ring and round one has to start in order for me to actually believe that Tyson Fury is actually willing to step foot in the ring with Alexander Usyk. He'll find a way to bullshit his way out of the fight. But when it comes to this is an interesting situation because obviously Ngannou's going to go in with a lot of confidence that you've came into the ring, you lasted 12 rounds against a champion in Fury, and now you're getting put against the person that we thought was going to be able to carry the division for the decade in Anthony Joshua. Here is the main issue that's going to be looked at for me. And it was the same issue that I looked at before the Volume fight. Where is Anthony Joshua mentally? If he's clicking on all cylinders, I fully then agree with Marquise that he will be able to stay on the outside, use the same playbook that he used the second round against Andy Ruiz, and then win on points. Because he's skilled enough to do that. The problem, unfortunately, with AJ is, and this is the main advantage when it comes to Ngannou, is AJ has shown that he is vulnerable to get hit. And I said it before, and I'll say it again.
Hit and hurt. And Ngannou seems to be the kind of guy who has the kind of power he can hurt anybody he puts his hands on.
Yeah, Ngannou actually does have legitimate power. He has legitimate power, and there's probably has to fine tune it in many ways to get it working on a boxing level because it's a different mechanics landing shots with power in boxing than it is in MMA. But he does have the power to do so, and he has the confidence in now doing so in how well he did fight against Fury. We can't just brush him off and say this kind of it, saying that he is not in the same league as AJ. He's earned at least the chance to say, you know what, he may be able to pull it off. I don't expect him to, though, because Joshua's also pretty smart. He understands that he really, really cannot afford to lose this fight. Because you win this fight, you either get that UK domestic gigantic payday versus Fury, or you get the shot against Usyk. The other reason why I say I'm probably leaning more to AJ to win is because I legitimately don't want to see how he'll react if he loses. We kind of saw twice already, well, actually 3 times, how Joshua tends to react when he loses. It's not exactly good look in many ways. As far as the mental breakdown that he suffers when he loses. And just to avoid seeing that, but more likely because I do think he may have his head on straight and he knows what's at stake, I do expect Joshua to win. It'll probably be on points. But I do think Ngannou's going to have a good showing for himself. And that's a good thing.
Sorry, I was on mute, and I think we may end things on that note. Well, again, want to thank everybody who joined us in the live chat with their comments and their questions. Alex, Alberto, G, Marquise, um, really appreciate it. If you have not done so, please make sure you hit that like and that subscribe button. Um, to do so, you'll get all notifications about future episodes of Pound for Pound Box Report. Help the overall algorithms. I'll go to the panel here. We began the show with ladies first as usual. We're going to end the show with ladies first. Gail from nyfights.com. For those who want to talk all things sweet science, let the folks know where they can hit you up.
You see it right there on the screen. You're going to hear it. nyfights.com. nyfights.com. Yes, I will be playing hooky on Friday. I will be up early watching those fights from Saudi. And if you find me on the social medias, the boxing Twitter, you want to chat about the fights, you need to find me, and I look forward to it.
I'll go to you, Daniel, from For Boxing News and the Inscriber. For those who want to talk all things the sweet science, for those who want to talk all things pro wrestling, for those who want to talk all things Miami Heat when it comes to the NBA, let the folks know where they can hit you up.
The same sources ever, folks, whether it's Twitter, Threads, Mastodon, Blue Sky, Dick Even Spoutable, Rocks99, RAWKZ99. Like I said, catch us on there. Hopefully things pick up, and hopefully the boxing news will not be the third ring circus it currently is at the moment.
Yeah, and it looks like things will pick up, particularly towards the um end of this month is the last weekend of boxing. It looks like it's going to have a lot of decent cards, a lot of decent fights there. For those who want to talk boxing, music, fitness with me on Twitter, or because I refuse to call it X, you know what it is with yours truly, Brother JR76. For those who want to talk boxing, music, and all things fragrance slash colognes, you can do so on TikTok and IG, Brother JRSC. On the next episode of Pound for Pound Box Report, we will have a recap of the card in Saudi Arabia, the fight between Anthony Joshua and Anthony Ngannou, Zhilei Zhang, Joseph Parker, Ray Vargas defending the WBC featherweight title against Nick Ball, as well as Madrimov and Kurbanov fighting for the vacant belt at 154 pounds. And we will have a preview of some fights happening on the 15th and the 16th. Most notably, um, William Zepeda, who many people remember last remember him and his losing effort against Regis Progress for the then vacant WBC belt at 140. Zepeda is fighting Maxie Hughes in an IBF WBA world title eliminator at lightweight. On the undercard, rising prospect, emerging contender Floyd Schofield. He's fighting a guy by the name of Suerlo. Marlon Esparza is defending her unified flyweight title against former champion Gabriela Elenas. So those fights are going to happen all on March 16th in Las Vegas. And also on the 15th, there's a fight card in NYC on UFC Fight Pass, headlined by Callum Walsh, fighting in a 10-round junior middleweight contest. Again, I want to thank everybody who joined us in the live YouTube chat. If you're checking us out on YouTube right now or later date, again, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. For Gail of nyfights.com, for Daniel of For Boxing News and the Inscriber Podcast, I'm your host, Michael. This has been episode 437 of the Pound for Pound Box Report. We will see you guys next time. Y'all have a good evening. Everyone have a good evening. Good night.